Yes, you read that correctly. I finally watched Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal. For those of you that missed out on the show, Primal is an Adult Swim animated program created by legendary animation director and creator of Samurai Jack, Genndy Tartakovsky. It was released in the year of 2019 to critical acclaim. I'm not joking in the slightest. It received amazing reviews. It has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, for God's sake. The common consensus is this show is amazing. And for the past 3 years that the show's been out, I've been asked about it countless times. Given my Instagram account and my affinity for all things Samurai Jack, many have reached out to me to find out my opinion on the latest and greatest work by the very same man that made my favorite show of all time. Without exaggeration, I'd say damn near or over 100 people have asked me my opinion on this show. And every time I told them the exact same thing. I haven't seen it yet. It's not like I didn't want to. Many factors played into my delayed viewing of this show. The biggest factor being the one major thing that changed in the way I consumed media between the time that Season 5 of Samurai Jack aired and the first episode of Primal aired. That being the death of cable television. At least for me. My thoughts on cable television are still a bit blurry. I grew up watching cable. I love cable television for what it is. I like the way it makes your favorite show coming on feel like an event. Like the mindless comfort of letting the channel decide what shows come on. It's nostalgic, it's traditional, it's familiar. But God, is it kind of inconvenient. In today's age, we live in an era of streaming. These days, 1 or 2 streaming services can kind of fill all of your needs for a fraction of the price. 2018-2019 just happened to fall right around the time that we made that faithful switch from cable to solely streaming services. And in that switch, I missed out on Primal. But ever since, I knew that I need to eventually watch this show. I mean, my Twitter bio literally says I'm the goddamn self-proclaimed biggest fan of Samurai Jack. So how could I possibly miss out on Samurai Jack's spiritual successor? Now, I'm going to be honest. Back then, I probably could have just pirated the show. But I wasn't just going to do that to my boy Genndy. But alas, a new streaming service emerged from the heavens to answer my prayers. HBO Max. HBO Max has very quickly become one of, if not my favorite streaming service ever. It has such a stacked lineup, so many classics in there. It not only allows me to watch Samurai Jack so much easier, but it also just so happens to have Primal on tap. So a few months ago, I finally set out on my noble quest to finally watch Primal. A show that I was destined to watch. One of the most celebrated and acclaimed animated programs from the past few years. And 10 episodes later, all I can say is, wow. I've really been missing out the last couple of years. Oh my God. Now I'd like this video to be a sorta review of Season 1 of Primal, as well as a recap of sorts. I will be going through each episode, giving the basic plot points and info, along with anything I picked up, my thoughts, what I liked. This will hopefully be the perfect video for anybody that's curious on what my thoughts on the show are, and or just get a recap of what happens in Season 1 of Primal, and hop back onto the hype train for this absolutely amazing show. This sort of goes without saying, but I'm going to insist on it nonetheless. This video will contain spoilers for Primal Season 1. I wholeheartedly believe that this show is well worth a watch. So if you would rather jump into this show spoiler-free, thou shalt not watcheth further. But if you do decide to watch further, I think this show is really an experience to watch. And you will still get a ton out of it no matter when you watch it. Hell, if you're on the fence about watching it, this video should hopefully get you interested enough in the show so that you call in sick to work and binge watch it all in one day, as God intended. And with that said, what better place to start than the beginning? Episode 1 opens on a quiet body of water, a stream. As a fish swims by, a spear emerges from off-screen to skewer the fish. The fish is put alongside many others, now part of a humble accumulation of food gathered by a lone Neanderthal out on his hunting trip. As the hunter waits in silence for another fish to emerge, suddenly a giant alligator-like creature launches out of the water towards our protagonist. as the screen quickly cuts to our first title card. In just the first few seconds of this show, a few things are set up for us. Firstly, the time period and setting of the show. Although impossible to know exactly, we can infer this story takes place at the dawn of man, in an entirely unestablished, ruthless world. We also meet our main character, whose name is so creative and deep it may make your head explode into a million tiny pieces. You ready? His name is Spear. Lastly, this world is unforgiving. It's eat or be eaten. Only the strongest survive. Spear narrowly escapes his encounter with the water beast, gathers his yield of fish, and begins his journey home. As he sees the smoke from his family's fire, a smile crawls across Spear's face. But as he nears closer to his family, something is wrong. He first spots some concerning tracks moving in the same direction he is. And before he can fully wrap his caveman mind around the gravity of this situation, his greatest fear is confirmed from a loud scream from his wife. He drops his fish and runs as fast as he can, but he is too late. He is, however, just in time to witness a group of T-Rex-looking dinosaurs massacre his wife and 2 children. Spear lets out some primal anger, throwing his spear at one of them, before getting ready to attempt to take on all of them at once. The equivalent to an express ticket straight to no longer being alive. But before another blow could be struck, the biggest T-Rex calls to the others, and they all leave. After this, Spear is filled with immense sadness. In the span of an instant, he went from having everything to having nothing. He then climbs his ass up a big old mountain and contemplates, well, unaliving himself, but is stopped after seeing a vision of his family in the sky. So instead he returns to the stream to hunt more fish. This time is vastly juxtaposed to the opening scene. In the opening scene, he was gathering fish, because he had 3 more mouths to feed. In this scene, he is only hunting for himself. So once he gets a fish, he immediately just eats it right then and there. But as he eats, Spear spots a blue T-Rex and follows it back to its cave. He seeks to let out some of his built-up rage on this beast, but is quickly stopped in his tracks when he sees that the dinosaur has children. In a subtle realization, he sees that this creature is more like him than he thought. Just like him, this creature is simply protecting and providing for its family. But amidst this realization, the very same group of T-Rex enter the cave, and the blue T-Rex begins to fight for its life to protect its children. Spear quickly jumps in to help, delivering this absolutely devastating blow. Despite Spear actually killing one, and them both fighting like hell, the baby T-Rexes are still sadly eaten. More tragic given that just moments before, they had begun to embrace Spear as one of their own after he protected them. The episode ends with Spear and Fang working together to defeat the massive enemy T-Rex, and they later make a sort of pact with each other to stay together despite their differences. I know that was a lot. The rest of the overviews will probably not be as long as that one. This first episode just simply has a lot to unpack, including the most important aspect of the entire show, the relationship between Spear and this blue dinosaur named Fang. The show itself is built upon the shoulders of these 2 characters. 2 characters that should theoretically always be at each other's throats, but instead choose to work together. They both went through the same hardship of losing it all and choose to stay with each other rather than be alone. It's kind of beautiful. Okay, now on to episode 2. The second episode deals heavily with the aspect of trust and empathy, vastly underdeveloped ideas in these prehistoric times. The episode is called The River of Snakes. And to answer your question, yes, all the titles are going to be just as, if not even more badass than this one. Most of this episode consists of one major plot point. Spear is attempting to hunt for food, but Fang constantly beats him to it and takes all the food. This is due to Spear and Fang not really trusting or caring about each other very much yet, and their own separate animal instincts lead to situations in which Fang still takes and devours something that Spear had successfully hunted. It's worth pointing out that in this show, because of the time period that it takes place, humans are not the sophisticated beings we are today. Rather, they are just another animal in the environment competing with everything else to survive. Spear's lack of food and trust for Fang eventually leads to building tension between the two protagonists. After one final dispute over a deer, the two break out into an all-out brawl. The fight is eventually broken up by one of the most terrifying things you could ever imagine, a flash flood full of snakes. With each other's help, they were able to survive, and with that, their bond grew quite a bit. The main purpose of this episode was to show the difficulty of trust in such a ruthless world. It's eat or be eaten out there, but we see massive character development by the end, because Spear and Fang are shown hunting together and sharing the animal they both worked to get. Episode 3 is titled A Cold Death. It opens on a snowstorm, one of, if not the only, drastic weather change that we witness in this entire season of the show. In the opening of this episode, we are introduced to a group of woolly mammoths. One of them is noticeably falling behind the others. He seems sick, injured, and otherwise weak. And due to the harsh weather conditions, he eventually gets left behind, with his herd unable to hear his calls for help. When we see this mammoth again, he looks even more worse for wear. And to add to his immense bad luck, he becomes hunted by our main characters. They bite off a little more than they can chew, however, and it takes some considerably brutal tactics to end the mammoth. Despite conquering such a large animal and securing a good amount of food in these suboptimal conditions, Spear does not look overjoyed. Rather, he looks at the animal with what is most likely a look of sympathy and sadness. They fashion a sled to transport the meat and continue forward through another blizzard. Meanwhile, the herd of mammoths had gone back for their comrade, only to find a looted carcass. They mourn the loss of their friend before deciding to go after whoever responsible. Cut to the two yahoos in question, currently seeking refuge from the bitter cold in a cave they stumbled across. Spear is still very clearly upset, and we are treated to a bit of a flashback to a hunting trip that Spear had with his son before the events of the first episode. In this flashback, he and his son hunt and kill an animal. After looking into the animal's eyes, Spear shows the same level of sympathy towards the animal as he did the mammoth. I don't believe Spear ever gets enjoyment from killing. Rather, it is just a way for him to survive. Suddenly, their shelter begins to cave in due to the mammoths striking it outside. Spear and Fang emerge from the cave and do battle with the mammoths. Throughout the entire fight, it is extremely clear that the mammoths are just too big and there are too many of them. Our protagonists quite literally get their asses tossed around for about 1 or 2 minutes. That is until Spear grabs the tusk of the fallen mammoth and all the mammoths stop in place. For they see what they came so far for, the tusk. Spear, with the adrenaline rush you can imagine he has, first attempts to use it as a weapon before eventually coming to that realization. He hands over the tusk and they all leave peacefully. They were never seeking violence, only the tusk of their fallen friend. The final scene shows the mammoths arriving at what is most definitely a graveyard. They went through all the trouble just to essentially bury their friend in this spot, the same location they will come to as well at the end of their days. This episode was definitely a pretty melancholy one, especially the ending. It's definitely one of the endings that stuck with me the most after seeing it for the first time. It's so sad and sweet all at the same time. Episode 4 is titled Terror Under the Blood Moon, which is actually one of the more forgettable episodes of the season, despite having one of the hardest titles. The episode starts with Spear and Fang running from a group of what seems to be velociraptors. They take some damage, escape into some tall grass, only to find themselves completely surrounded, right as the sun sets on the horizon. Seeing this, all the raptors suddenly run off, afraid of what is to come. And what is to come is completely unknown to our protagonists. They see the eyes of creatures hiding under rocks, and then spot what seems to be a primitive man carrying a dead animal, while frantically looking into the sky. This is the first time we are shown another human-like entity apart from Spear and his family. Although this fella seems to have more features to imply he is somewhere between a monkey and a man. Either way, he takes a bad step and completely fucks his entire leg. Honestly impressive. He completely discombobulated the entire fucking thing in one step. It is at this point that we are introduced to the threat in this episode. Bat-like flying creatures ravage the land during this blood moon. Spear is taken by one of these creatures while saving Fang, and he is brought back to their lair, a cave atop a massive, steep, tower-like mountain. Fang sure does attempt to climb up the mountain multiple times. He really put in some effort trying to fucking run straight up the damn thing. He finally plays dead so that the bats would come and bring him to the top. It is at the top that Fang discovers a giant enemy spider. Fang then frees Spear, they kill the spider, jump off the mountain, retrieve Spear's spear from the monkey man, kill some more bats, and that's episode 4 for you. Now we are jumping right into my personal favorite episode of the entire series. Episode 5 is titled The Rage of the Ape Men, which is one letter off from the title of my future autobiography. The episode opens with Spear and Fang stumbling across a little oasis, and for the first time since the beginning of the show, they are able to truly relax. There's even some more parallelism when Spear goes to hunt some fish in the pond, only to find that he can just grab them out of the water. Also, side note, Spear literally devours the fish he catches like a whole apple. Like he just, like the bones and everything. Sadly, they are not able to savor their time in paradise because they are knocked out and kidnapped. When they awake, it is to the sound of screaming monkeys. They are tied up and witness an elder monkey prepping what seems to be an arena. Multiple gorillas enter the arena, and as soon as the elder's staff strikes the ground, they all start fighting each other. At first it seems to just be like a sport to them. That is until one of them draws blood. This isn't a sport. This is a battle to the death. Inevitably, one savage ape is left standing. He looks to the elder for his reward, that reward being a drop of their sacred black liquid and to be the one that gets to kill their new prisoners. The drop of black liquid transforms the gorilla into a Hulk-like creature, the first instance of anything truly paranormal in this universe. Fang is released first to fight the beast, if you can even call it a fight. That thing just fucking curb stomps the shit out of Fang. Spear does manage to free himself, and after punching the monkey in the eye and being promptly tossed across the map, he goes and chugs all of the black liquid like fucking Badlands chugs with a 2-liter bottle of soda. This transforms him as well into a Hulk-like monstrosity. And the battle between him and the Giga Monkey doesn't go on for too long before Spear literally rips his arms off and beats him to death with them. The look on the other monkeys' faces perfectly reflect my own during the first viewing of this episode. Like, damn. The other monkeys all attempt to overwhelm Spear in what is most definitely the most violent couple minutes in animated history. These monkeys die in so many ways. This is my favorite part of the entire show. It's equal parts gruesome, badass, and hilarious, with all the creative final moments of these monkeys. The episode ends with Spear emerging from the remains of his enemies and making the most wallpaper-worthy pose ever before tending to Fang, who is barely clinging onto life. Episode 6 is called Scent of Prey, and it picks up directly after the events of episode 5. Fang is found to be alive from his injuries from the ape men, but is in critical condition. The basis of this episode is Spear tending to Fang's wounds and injured state, while also protecting her from various predators, such as vultures, creepy cave bugs, and finally a pack of wild dogs. In the climax of this episode, Spear attempts to fend off these dogs, when suddenly Fang emerges from the cave they were taking refuge in, fully recovered. As episode 5 was my favorite, I'd probably have to say episode 6 is probably my least favorite of the series. Not that it's bad, not by any means, but episode 6 is just the least great of the greats in my opinion. But don't you worry your fragile little head, because the next episode is another absolute banger. Episode 7, The Plague of Madness. This episode answers a question that I'm sure has been rattling around in your mind since the moment you gained consciousness. What would a zombie outbreak look like in the time of dinosaurs? In the first minutes of this episode, we see a long-necked dinosaur living its best life before getting bitten by this freak of nature zombie-like dinosaur, only for him to be made boneless mere seconds later. This bite alone is enough to make the long-necked dinosaur turn as well, eventually deteriorating and attacking others of his kind, massacring his entire herd. Spear and Fang stumble across this slaughter and are dumbfounded over it. As they stare in awe, one of them rises from the dead behind them. After a short but terrifying chase from the corpse of this beast, they escape into a canyon, baiting the zombie to jump as well and fall to its supposed demise. At this moment, you can assume the shock that Spear and Fang are going through. They were almost killed by an animal that is normally a herbivore, one that does not hunt or devour meat. Whatever this disease is, it was enough to turn a fairly peaceful dinosaur into a bloodthirsty beast. Spear has this absolutely terrifying dream that night about him and Fang being bitten and infected with such a deteriorating disease. They then attempt to quickly escape while the beast is still seemingly dead, but then it once again springs to life and chases them down the canyon. They narrowly escape through a tight passage that the zombie gets stuck in. Just beyond this passage are various erupting pools of lava. As Spear and Fang slowly work through the area, carefully avoiding flying magma, the zombie suddenly breaks free and chases them through the lava pits. The zombie, obviously with its lack of critical thinking skills, falls into the lava. Spear and Fang then seem to watch with a lot of sympathy as the zombie disintegrates. It is by far one of the worst ways to die, and it's not like the long-necked dinosaur deserved it. It was a peaceful animal that was forced to be like that only because it was infected. Its ultimate demise was fitting for the monster it became, but certainly not for the animal that it once was. Episode 8 is called Coven of the Damned. I still can't get over these titles, I'm sorry. They go so freaking hard. I'm 100% sure that a band could name themselves any one of these titles, and they would already have one of the most badass names in rock history. This episode, in my opinion, is one of, if not the saddest episode in the series. The episode starts with Spear and Fang stumbling upon a sort of magic ritual being carried out by these goblin human-like characters. The ritual consists of burning a human alive as their leader transforms into a big, dark, magic entity, very reminiscent of Aku from Samurai Jack, and takes the life force from the man and forges a new baby using it. It is then that the viewer's perspective of it all is changed. The goblin women surrounding are not cheering for the death of the man. They are begging the leader to have the baby. They all wish to raise the kid. The baby is handed off to one of them, and very quickly afterwards, Spear and Fang are spotted. Although they run, they are no match for the magic that these entities possess. They capture Spear and mind control Fang. Spear awakens tied up the same way as the sacrificed man was. He sees Fang emerge from the woods and a smile grows on his face. A smile that quickly evaporates as soon as he sees the woman riding atop her and seemingly controlling her. He yells to Fang, and to the astonishment of the woman, Fang breaks free of the mind control momentarily. She notices how strong of a bond that the two of them share. It is at this moment that she freezes them both in place with magic. Then almost immediately she decides to use another bit of magic that she possesses. She draws a circle on the ground, brings it to Fang, and is able to use it as a portal into her memories. She begins sleuthing around in Fang's mind before stumbling across the tragic event Fang endured in the first episode, the death of her children. She hops out of the portal with immense sadness in her eyes and embraces Fang. She then decides to look into Spear's memories and sees the birth of one of his children, and then sees the demise of his whole family from the very same beasts that killed Fang's children. She hops out of the portal and unfreezes time. As she rides away on Fang, she looks back at Spear with a very sad look. The lady returns to her home to look at a now hidden drawing on her wall. We are then treated to the story of her past as she creates a portal into her own memories. We are shown that she was once selected to care for one of the newborn children, a child she cared very dearly for. One day when her daughter and her were out frolicking in the flowers, the little girl wandered too far away and took a plunge off a ledge to her untimely death. This woman had lost the only family she had, just like Spear and Fang did. When it came time for the sacrifice ritual to be done on Spear, the sympathetic lady saved him by distracting the others in the form of a bird and sending Fang to get Spear far away. Eventually the lady is defeated, and as she is struck with the final killing blow, her connection to Fang fades away. Spear and Fang both quietly thank the lady for her sacrifice and continue moving forward. The final scene of this episode shows the kind lady reuniting with her daughter in heaven. This episode is absolutely gut-wrenching, especially the ending with her reuniting with her daughter. Such an amazingly sad and sweet episode that is so memorable. An absolute highlight of the season, in my opinion. The 9th and second to last episode is titled The Night Feeder. The episode definitely shows a lot of signature Genndy Tartakovsky charm. One thing I absolutely loved in his other work, Samurai Jack, was Genndy's determination to go through with his creative ideas, especially when framing the episode in a different way. This episode of Primal is completely centered around one thing, an extremely fast and powerful beast that always stays hidden until it's too late. This creature is only briefly seen at the end of the episode. Most times before that, we are only shown a first-person view of the creature as it lunges forward at its prey. And this creature doesn't just kill its prey, it absolutely obliterates them. Like, they just fucking explode most of the time. Like, Jesus Christ. It's also very interesting because there's absolutely no way that this thing is eating all these animals. It's almost like it just kills for fun. By the time Spear and Fang are up to battle this thing, they had already seen firsthand all the damage that this thing can do. The initial chase portion of the fight takes place entirely behind the eyes of the Night Feeder. That is until Fang is able to get a hit on it. After striking the beast, Fang is covered in a black slime, much like the black liquid seen with the 8 men. Spear and Fang are able to defeat the beast by using fire to trap it and then throwing a flaming spear, lighting it itself aflame, burning it to death in brutal fashion. Now we are on to the final episode of the series, and the one that changes everything. Episode 10 is titled Slave of the Scorpion. The episode opens with Spear once again fishing, mirroring that of the opening of episode 1, when he notices bubbles come to the surface. In episode 1, he was attacked in the same position by a monstrous creature. Therefore, Spear braces himself for a similar threat. Instead, one of the most unpredictable things happen. A human emerges from the water, lunging towards Spear. To be completely fair, she is running from a creature almost identical to the alligator thing in episode 1. But they eventually do catch up with the fleeing human, and Spear has the first truly peaceful interaction with another human-like being since the death of his family. The human is a woman. She has metal shackles on her wrist, an incredibly uncomfortable-looking collar on her neck, and a scorpion tattooed on the back of her bald-ass head. She is seen worshipping the moon multiple times, showing us the first example of religion as a concept in this world. But that is not the only thing that she introduces to Spear and Fang. If Spear is a hunter, she would be considered a gatherer. She gathers various things in order to cook with. Yes, you heard me right. This lady cooks. Throughout all of these episodes, this is the first time we are shown anything cooking something. Every time Spear and Fang have killed an animal, they have ate it completely raw. This woman stands as proof of more intelligent or intellectually evolved humans out there. She travels with our protagonists for a while, eventually gaining their trust, and they help her free her from her shackles and collar. She is so grateful for this that she does another first in this show. She speaks. Like a real word. She tells them her name.
Mira.
This is huge. Up until this point, all we've been hearing is grunts, screams, and various other noises. Mira is actually able to say her name. Not only that, but she later shows that she can speak an entire language of some kind. Later on, after becoming an even bigger asset to the group after showing that she can not only fashion a bow, but also use it, Mira attempts to explain her story to Spear through drawings. Her village was attacked by soldiers of some kind led by a sort of warlord, and her people were taken as slaves. She was able to escape, and that's how she came across Spear and Fang in the first place. As the episode progresses, Mira continues to win over not only Spear, but also Fang, with both of them seeming to respect her quite a bit towards the end of the episode. But all is not completely well. There is someone watching them. And after a night in a cave, they are attacked by a bunch of monkey-like warriors with stone weapons. Despite taking them out quite easily, especially after taking a hold of one of their stone warhammers, there are just too many of them, and they kidnap Mira. Spear and Fang chase after them intently, but eventually come across the monkeys massacred by many, many arrows. She had been intercepted by a group with sophisticated arrows and shoes. As they continue to move forward, they hear the screams of Mira on a boat sailing away off into the horizon. Before the episode ends, we hear Spear speak his first word in the form of Mira's name. Mira. And that's the end of Season 1. To end off this video, I'd love to show you 3 of the main things that I loved about this show. Number 1, the action. If you're looking for an action-packed animated show, boy do I have a show for you. The show is very, very violent, very bloody, but honestly that's kind of the point. There's no sugarcoating in this show. The world in these early days were brutal. Humankind at its dawn were just another animal on the food chain. Even as we became more civilized, there was always another group that wanted to take what was ours. Add dinosaurs to the mix and you got a recipe for non-stop ruthlessness. I can say with 100% certainty that this show is the most violent yet well-made thing that I've ever seen. There are kills in this show that I've rewatched probably 100 times while making this video, and every time I felt like saying out loud, "Dear Lord, oh my fucking God." You can just tell in each fight that every move, every kill were carefully thought out, which makes rewatching it so much fun. It's a bit of an odd thing to say given the graphic nature of this show, but given the more somber and heartfelt moments mixed with the top-tier gruesome fights, this show has become a bit of a new comfort show for me. There's been multiple times while making this video that I've just found myself putting on a few episodes just to enjoy it all over again. Number 2 is the storytelling. In my humble opinion, Genndy Tartakovsky has always been an amazing storyteller. And Primal is no exception. If anything, it's concrete proof of his skills. One of the hardest things to do in telling a story is doing so completely visually. Long-winded exposition dumps are a dime a dozen these days. Many movies and TV shows just explain every single little thing to the audience just so they don't miss out. Genndy has always been pretty against this. One of my favorite things in Samurai Jack are the examples of purely visual storytelling. There are entire episodes where Jack barely says a word, and the audience is trusted to follow along with only visual cues. It's hard to do for most directors, but Genndy excels at it. Throughout almost the entirety of Primal, there is absolutely no speaking. Sure, Spear makes noise, but it's far from any intelligible words, let alone descriptive words. The one time a character really speaks is when Mira starts speaking in her native tongue, a language that we do not understand and is impossible to translate. Genndy deadass made an entire show not only without using dialogue as a crutch, but without using dialogue at all. His framing of scenes and his context clues were enough for us to follow along with these characters. And most importantly to me, he trusted that we were smart enough to do so, unlike many of today's movies and TV shows. Last thing I loved about this show was the pure creativity. Genndy has always been the king of creativity in my eyes. Just look at Samurai Jack as a concept. It's insane. It's simple, yet the future setting leads to endless possibilities. And Primal doesn't disappoint in this factor in the slightest. I wasn't sure at first, given that the premise is just a man and a dinosaur become friends, but you can see the passion of Genndy Tartakovsky spew out of every episode with every kill, character, or monstrous beast. I know Genndy loves making shows because of how much hard work and passion he puts into them. There's so much love and care squished into these 10 episodes, and in the current state of TV and animation, that is so beautiful to see. All in all, I would 100% recommend that you check out Primal if you haven't already. It is already high among the ranks of my favorite TV shows ever. Can't say it's my favorite show of all time. That crown still very much belongs to Samurai Jack. But I can honestly say that Primal has the definite potential of being Genndy Tartakovsky's greatest work. His magnum opus. It's bold, it's brutal, it's beautiful. And I can't wait to see where it goes next. While initially starting work on this project, I saw over on Genndy's Instagram that Primal had not only got nominated for an Emmy, but it won the damn thing. It's absolutely deserved. I'm so glad to see a creator I love so much get rewarded for all of his hard work. But definitely the most exciting post that I saw over there was the one that Genndy made on February 21st. It simply stated, "It's gonna be a Primal summer." You heard me right. Season 2 is coming this summer. Could be just in a matter of weeks. And I am beyond hyped. And I hope you are too. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I think you can tell from my excitement that I was very excited to finally talk about this show. This video was another big passion project, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on the show in the comments below. But with that, I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and I hope I see you in the next one.
I want some cheeseburgers just to eat. I'm talking ketchup, my nigga mustard on the beat. You gotta put a lot of lettuce, please, because I like to have a lot of grease. I remember eating outside with my whole team. Now a nigga gotta stay home cause of quarantine.
Alright, Jack, where is the sword?